Welcome back to week 3. In today's explainer, we're diving straight into something absolutely fascinating. We're going to bridge the gap, and it's a big one, between our earliest, fuzziest childhood memories and the hidden ironclad rules that are secretly running our adult lives right now. If you've ever felt like your reactions are just, stuck on autopilot, especially when things get tough or stressful, well, you are exactly where you need to be. We're drawing from the deeply insightful world of Adlerian psychology today to figure out exactly how we're wired.
So before we really get into unraveling these behavioral patterns, I want you to ask yourself a question. What is one private rule that runs your life when you're stressed? Maybe it's this tiny, nagging voice that says, if I don't do this perfectly, I'm a total failure. Or maybe it's, I must never ever let them see me sweat. Just hold on to that thought for a second, because today we are going to trace that exact rule right back to where it started. All right, section 1, the meaning map of memory. To really understand our current patterns, we first have to look backward. And we aren't looking back to prosecute the past or, point fingers and assign blame. Not at all. We're looking back to uncover the foundational story that's operating silently beneath your current story.
And here is a core distinction we need to make right off the bat. A memory is a meaning map. It is not courtroom evidence. Alfred Adler's approach to psychology tells us that when we recall these early childhood moments, we aren't gathering objective facts for a trial. We're not trying to prove what factually happened on a random Tuesday when you were 6 years old. Instead, we are looking at a meaning map. That memory, it tells us what mattered to you, what hurt you, what helped you, and crucially, what you decided back then about how you belong in this world.
Think about your early recollections. From birth to age 10, we experience literally millions of moments. Millions! Yet if pressed, most of us can only visualize a handful, maybe 6 to 12 really specific, vivid memories. So why those? Well, out of thousands of experiences, we selectively hold on to those specific memories because they project our deepest current convictions about life. They aren't just the past. They are living metaphors for how we view ourselves and others right this very minute.
Moving into section 2, uncovering your private logic. Because you see, those early childhood conclusions, they don't just stay neatly in the past. They travel with us, and they eventually harden into an internal operating system that completely governs how we interact with the world today.
We actually call this operating system your private logic. Think of it like a hidden rulebook. It contains statements like, people always leave, or anger is what keeps me safe, or maybe I must not need anyone. The tricky part here? These rules feel so absolutely true, so fundamentally woven into who we are, that we stop recognizing them as mere rules. We just treat them like gravity, unquestionable facts of life. But remember, they are just conclusions we drew a really long time ago.
Which brings us to section 3, how memories create rules. The absolute key here is understanding how these rules get written in the first place. How does a childhood adaptation transform into an adult belief?
Let's look at how direct this pipeline is. Take a child who learns that praise only comes from bringing home straight A's. That child decides, I must perform. Well, decades later, that child's best attempt to survive their environment has turned into a rigid, self-perpetuating roadmap in adulthood. Failure means I am nothing. Or say a child grew up in a really chaotic house. They might decide, I must disappear just to stay safe. Fast forward, and that hardens into the adult rule, I must not need anyone. These are highly purposeful adaptations, but as adults, they're the exact things leading to our isolation and distress.
Okay, so how do we actually catch this private logic in the act? When you have an emotional reaction that feels, frankly, disproportionately larger than the actual moment. Let's say you drop a glass in the kitchen and suddenly you're drowning in intense, overwhelming shame. You can use 4 specific steps. Track that physical sensation back to the hidden rule it's trying to protect. Ask yourself, what just happened? Second, what did my body do first? Third, what sentence just flashed in my mind as if it were a total fact, like, I'm always messing everything up? And finally, what vulnerability was that rule trying to shield me from?
Section 4, the gift and the cost. Once we identify that underlying rule, what do we actually do with it? Well, to truly change these deeply ingrained patterns, we have to validate why they exist in the first place, but without letting them control our future. And this is hands down the most compassionate insight of this entire explainer. We do not shame the younger self for adapting. Every single piece of private logic you have was formed intelligently. It was a protective measure. If you learn to never show emotion, it's probably because at one point, showing emotion simply wasn't safe. We absolutely have to depathologize our struggles here. Adlerian psychology insists that we are purposeful actors, we are not broken objects. You aren't defective,
You were just really, really good at surviving. But now we must teach the adult self to choose a new way.
To make that choice, we evaluate what we call the conflict of adaptation. First, we honor the gift. That old rule, let's say, I cannot trust anyone. It gave you a gift. It kept you cautious, safe, and prepared in a volatile environment, and we say thank you to that gift. But then, we have to be brutally honest about the cost. Today, right now, that exact same rule keeps you lonely, secretive, and isolated. By analyzing this conflict between the gift and the cost, we lower our shame and confront the reality that our old survival tools, they're basically holding us hostage now.
And that brings us to the real turning point, reframing the hinge. We shift from the old rule, which is always absolute and rigid, I cannot trust anyone, to what we call a courageous truth. Something like, I can choose trustworthy people slowly and wisely. This cognitive reframing is a total game changer. It allows us to be grateful for the old survival mechanism while actively, consciously choosing a more honest, community-oriented, and useful path forward.
Finally, Section 5, the courage to be imperfect. Because finding that courageous truth, that's really only half the battle. Shifting from an old rule to a new truth requires us to actually take action, even when we feel entirely, completely unprepared.
The path forward isn't about just sitting around waiting for all your fear to magically evaporate. Self-confidence isn't this warm, fuzzy feeling that arrives before you do something scary. Actually, scratch that. It's never that. It is a practice step taken while your knees are still knocking. You build the confidence by taking the step over and over again. You allow the repetition of a new, courageous action to slowly rewrite that old private logic.
I absolutely love this quote. Courage is not self-hatred with better behavior. Courage is movement with dignity. Developing the courage to be imperfect means allowing yourself to actually participate in life without demanding flawless self-presentation from yourself. It means practicing honesty. It means allowing yourself to make a mistake, focusing on the repair and the humility afterward, and realizing that imperfection is not the enemy of belonging. You absolutely do not have to be perfect to be worthy of connection.
As we wrap up our Week 3 Explainer, I want to leave you with one absolutely vital question to chew on. What rule helped you survive, but no longer helps you live? Acknowledge the incredible gift it gave you, recognize the heavy cost it demands today, and dare to leave it behind. You survived your past. Now it's time to choose your future. What rule are you ready to rewrite?